Alex, sorry for being late. It was an event near my house and it was just absolutely noisy. It's crazy. Anyway, now the event is over and I can stream. So if I were to stream just now, you would have been hearing a lot of noise and a lot of people speaking through microphones. You wouldn't be able to hear me. Anyway, we were working on the buff and debuff system from yesterday, so let's continue that and finish it up. We have about 3 hours plus, so I'm hoping that I can finish up the remaining code from yesterday and also finish up the article. It's a little bit ambitious, but I'm gonna try and see what I can do. So where we left off yesterday, we managed to create a buff for the garlic effect, which I think is pretty decent. So then our buffs, right, allow us to apply an effect to the enemies to anything that's been hit by the buff. So we can add either a particle effect or a tint, and we have done the particle effect. So now we are gonna just apply the tint. So if I hit something with the garlic, you will see that there is a black effect that appears, and if we select Spellbinder, it increases the duration of our buffs. So if I hit a bat, for example, you will see that it glows black as well, to show that it's been affected by the buff of the garlic. All in all, pretty nice effect, I would say. So now we just have to put in the tinting as well. So when let me just turn down the music a little bit. So when we have our buffs and debuffs, we also have an option to apply a tint. And by default, the tint is colorless, but well, we can always apply something. So for the buff, right, it's built into the entity stats script, and I'm thinking of building the tinting into the entity stats script as well. So let me just start writing some code and then we will see where it gets us. So let me just create a new color called tint, and this tint will affect a sprite renderer, right? So probably we will want to get a reference to all the sprite renderers object, right? I'm just gonna start writing some code and then later on we'll figure out what best to do. And under apply buffs, right? We have buff it's added. Particle system associated with these buffs. So every time we add a buff, we have to update the tint as well. And every time we remove the buff, we have to also update the tint. Let's call this color the original color. And then we have a list of sprites that we apply the coloring to. So what we're gonna do with the colors is we're just gonna average out the colors. So whenever we add a new color, it's just gonna combine the old color with the new color. It's gonna average everything out. So we will need an array of sprites, and we will also need an array of light color sounds fine. So a list of light colors and a list of sprite renderers. Maybe the sprite we can just get it live. I think that works. But that means that we have to override the start function as well. We have a start function in instead. Something we do to replace this one. So the reason for that is because we have to record the start color. So I'm going to have to create a protected control void start. This records the original color and adds the available applied colors to the object. So let's save the original color and save all the sprites. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to add colors together. But I don't want I only want to have RGB. I don't want to have three colors. So I'm just gonna add R, G, and B values inside. So I have to add the color separately. The alpha value is the target color. And the value that's added here, I want to use the weighting. Color. This should be total weight starts with 1. Total weight is be added by A, and finally at the end of this, grab target color. Divide it by the weight. So this will give us the sprite's color. Color to the completed. SR. So this update is the color of the character, and start function. I guess we don't need the start function. Okay? Just need to save the original color. So we have a reference to the sprite renderer as well. Say a reference to the sprite renderer here. So we have a reference to the sprite renderer. So just the sprite. Okay, component. And if that's the case, then maybe we don't need this. So let's just work with a single sprite for this one. So we just sprite. So now when we add colors, it averages out. And then the damage, and just add color to the sprite, right? So we have the original color here, it's managed. So once we have this, the enemy stats doesn't have to have, doesn't need to record the original color and everything anymore. So base, start here. Then we get the max health and everything, but we don't need to do the coloring here anymore. And instead we can just add the color and then remove the color after a while. Let me just test this out to see whether this works out. I think this can work. So we have the enemy stats here. Hi, Chiu Tian, it's been a while. Haven't seen you in a while. Coding a buff and debuff system. And I'm trying to work out how to apply different tinting colors to the sprite. Just finished the part 22. Did you like it? The buff and debuff system I'm real excited for as well, because I think that it has a lot of potential, because after we are done with this, we'll be able to create a whole bunch of weapons. I found that the prop also needs the sortable script. There is a small issue with the sortable script as well, with the null reference exceptions. I hope you saw the forum post on it. The sortable script is really cool. I think it can help solve a lot of issues with stacking, right? And I didn't expect the code to be so simple. I thought it would be a little bit more complex, but simple is always great. Yeah, that makes sense. You're right. So it doesn't work with Aura that well as well, right? So for the Aura, perhaps you will have to set the order layer to a very low value for it to make sense. Or yeah, we can just use sortable script. That also works. We can, now that you mention it, right? Yeah, there are a lot of considerations that we can make with the sortable script. So those are good observations. So we can make the sortable script apply to particle effects as well. It's one thing. And well, a simple way to fix this would be to just add one more layer. First. No, that doesn't work. I'm sorry, doesn't work. Let me just test out the aura. Because I think the aura always appears under everything, right? So as long as we tweak the positioning of the aura, I think everything should be quite fine. So it's under everything now. So if you just assign it a very low order layer, I think it should work fine. But the props, you're right about props. So right now I'm creating a buff and debuff system. So then see that when the garlic hits something, it applies a debuff. Then you get this black thing that appears for a while on anything that's hit. I'm not sure if I'm sharing my screen. I'm not sharing my screen. Let me just show this again. Just grab the garlic layer. I mean the garlic weapon. Don't know what I'm saying. So what I have so far is the debuff affects enemies. So when you hit an enemy with the garlic, there's this black glow that appears on them. So if you get a flower wall, then you can see this in a more obvious manner. Because with the flower wall, you will see this thing will apply to a whole bunch of enemies. See that? Now we have flower wall. So if I just hit a bunch of the flowers, right? Now you'll see that they turn black for a while after they get hit. Why are the bats so strong? Like the bats are unkillable, man. Why do the bats have so much health? The bat is not dying right now. So if you split up the weapon effect layer with foreground layer, that works as well. It's a great idea. So you just gotta play around the layers a little bit to get the ordering of your effects to show up properly. Now we have a problem now because there is null reference exception. Oh, the null reference exception is just causing the damage not apply properly. But otherwise, I think everything is still working okay. When the area becomes larger, it'll be more obvious. It's good observation. Thanks. I'll watch out for that, and I'll post any solutions that I find along the way. Right now, let me figure out this part here. So I'm slightly changing the script for the enemy stats here because I want to change the damage flash. So here, instead of doing this, I'm going to just apply colors. That this will be damage. Right, colors, edit color, and right. Let's see if this works. If this works, then we don't have to change the damage flash really that much. Just have to update some variables. So original color is no longer needed, but SR is also no longer needed. So let's use the sprite here. Okay, let's see how this works out. There's still now reference exception here. So I've got to figure out what's going on. Make these stats. And we should initialize the list of colors here. Makes sense. Okay, let's see how this works out. The color now doesn't apply, which it doesn't apply because well, we have to update the color every time we add the apply color. So maybe I'll need a new function. Oh, for the curse multiplier, is there any way we can change the effect rate? Now it's curse equals to 1 blood damage and speed will be twice. So for the curse, right, you can go to the enemy directly. So for each enemy, you can configure how affected they are by the curse by selecting the stats that are boosted by curse. So these are the stats that you can boost by a curse. And the curse value does not multiply by 2 times, it multiplies by the curse stat. So the higher your curse stat, the greater the curse value will be. So you don't really control the curse value, all you control are the stats that you want to increase or decrease. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense, huh? So it doesn't, the curse value doesn't just multiply everything by 2. I think you probably are mistaken. Like... I change the effect right now is curse. Let me try and okay, maybe I'm mistaken. Default curse already set 1. So when you have 5 curse, it becomes only 12. Is that it? Let me test it out. So right now I have okay, let me try it out. Yeah, I'll let you know. Right now I have enemies who have health 4, right? That's the base stats. And the actual is also 4. But if I increase the curse value, right? Let me just increase the curse value to say 1.5. Or let's say 2. Okay, if I get the curse value of 2, then what's gonna happen is that the enemies will have 2 times health, yeah? 2 times, 2 times. It's not 5 times. I'm not sure where you got that value here. Because at the curse value of 2, I only have a max health of 20 and mostly at 2.5. So maybe you want to check out your code, or you can make a post in the forums with your code. Maybe one of your formulas is off. If let me just check my script for curse value. So under enemy stats, right, you want to look at your operators, whether the values are correct. So what I have here is that the stats value is multiplied by the factor. And then this factor value over here is the curse. So it's to get cumulative curse. So the other thing that you may want to watch out for is that your get cumulative curse formula is correct. So you want to make sure that it's correct, because if this formula is wrong, right, then basically your curse value is going to be off. So do double check this and let me know what you have. Light tint. This will give me black colors. Update. So here I also want to have a remove color. I think this should be enough to get our system working. So when the enemy gets damaged, there is a damage flash, and then this damage flash will do an apply tint and remove tint. Hopefully this works. I'm pretty confident that this will work. Let's have a look at this. Oh, can't really see whether it works. The X hits too hard. Maybe it's fading away right away. Let's use a knife. Oh, whip. Doesn't seem to work still. Try a knife. Let's get a knife. The flash doesn't seem to be working, you know, which is annoying to say the least. Let's print out the target color. See whether this works. So the target color here is let's try this back. 111. Let's try using a different formula. I'll explain how this works later on. my focus right now is just to get our color to appear correctly. So it does flash red still. It's just not as obvious now because the coloring is averaged out. Unless I have a weight of 0. Oh no, 0 doesn't work. So the coloring is less obvious now. That's because I changed the tinting formula. But this allows us to add different kinds of debuffs. So it's not exactly a bad thing, you know. I do want to play around with the weighting over here though. Basically have a color. If I say reduce the weighting over here, you will see the red becomes more obvious. So then the question becomes, how do we find an appropriate value? How to find a suitable value? Let's see how this thing is flower. I think the weighting is important. Have to have a weight of 1. But can we increase the weighting of the first color? That's the question. So if I keep this weight 1, the weight here is going to have to be on right there. Okay, let's keep it as it is first. We'll keep it as it is first. Well, I mean, one way that we can do this is to multiply this by 2. This can amplify the color here. So if I amplify the weight, you will see this becomes redder, which is not a bad thing. So perhaps that's the trick. And it's not a bad trick at all. Same thing here. Touches, and then it. See, the blue is a lot more obvious. The blue is a lot more obvious. And the more I weight it, the stronger the color becomes. So if I were to weight it by, say, 4 times, the color really stands out after that. See that? It stands out so much more now. Why is the alpha value getting changed though? That doesn't make sense. Oh, that's because the pad is dead. So when the thing hits the flower, you see that the red becomes very obvious here. Very important. So the question becomes, how do I weight this thing then? Because I don't want the tint to be more obvious. Let me just introduce a public float variable called tint factor. And it's just gonna start at 4. So this would be tint factor. And I think that will be great now. So the question now just becomes, we have all these different enemies now. They will have a new variable called tint factor, which we have to adjust. It's right on top here. So this allows us to control how tintable the enemy is. And then as we add more buffs, we will get the enemies getting tinted in different ways. So for example, right, if I were to, let me see how we can tint this character to black. So we can say reduce the brightness. So let me give you an example, right? So if I were to, now that we have our tinting system applied, maybe I can just make this a protected function, because we don't need to call this. We just need to call apply tint or remove tint. So when we apply a buff now, we just have to also have to also grab the tint and then apply the tint. So here we can, this would be the tint color. Let's see there. So let me change apply colors here to apply tints. Tint factors 4x. So here we will be x tint. What's the linear value of? Can I make this nullable? That way I can check whether this is null. So if this is not equals to null, we can get So we apply the tint here as well, and I don't think we need this caliper now. And then when the buff is removed, then we just unapply the tint. So whether it's here, everything 0. This, and want to add this line so bottom here. And now I think we can apply tints to our objects. And I think they should work just fine. So I'm gonna get the garlic buff to also apply a black tint. So this will look something like this. Just grab the garlic buff. For the tint here, I'm gonna set it alpha to 1, and then the tint here is gonna be 0. So the garlic debuff should also make something appear blacker. But I need garlic. Show this to you. Okay, there we go. So if I hit an enemy with the garlic, you see that the debuff causes the enemy to also turn black. Yeah, so this is because I can add a tint to the enemy. This can be useful for effects like freeze. So for example, if I want to, say I want to apply a freeze effect, right? A freeze is going to be blue. So let's say if I apply a blue effect to this debuff, you'll see that by getting hit with this effect, enemies will turn blue. See that? So we can have different special statuses. So later we can maybe do a freeze buff, and then this can turn enemies darker. So for the garlic debuff, just to test out this system here, I'm just gonna reduce the alpha and then turn this black. So alpha is gonna control how strong this effect is going to apply. And you know, it will darken enemies a little bit. And then let's create a freeze debuff later on after that. There we go. Hit this. Try this here. Okay, so enemies that are hit by the debuff, you see turn blacker, which I really like. I like this tinting system. I like it. Then so now the tricky part is just to apply this changes here, right? You just open up GitHub. And here you can see all the changes being locked down. Okay, let's go to our article and see the changes that we have to make. Applying visual effects. Wow, this is a really long section. And after we using a if we have few one, two, three, color will on so these are the added sections right here. And all of these functions here as well. And well, we'll have to modify play stats. Integrate that as well. Okay. Give me stats. Also define stuff. So classes. Define your stuff. Why? Things. player stats. Just have to add a couple of lines of code. Just right here. So this becomes protected override. We add this and this. All the things we so have to update. So where are the changes to enemy stats? The changes are that we remove the references to the sprite somewhere. Yeah, it's here. So these two are gone. Under the start function, we also have a couple of lines that are gone. So before the health, between health and movement, little setters as well. This is gone. And in its place, we have base start right here. Then we mark this as protected and override. And so we are inheriting the variables from enemy stats as well. So this means that we replace this used to be SR, place the SR here, sprite, SR, sprite. This is now sprite as well. So it's this. And finally, most importantly, we this is no longer SR color. Apply tint. So this is the new line. And the old line is, we remove this old line. This is removed as well. This is added. So finally, with this tinting system added, we can afford, let's just move this all the way down. And this would be H. Having tint to the out. So adding of the tinting to our buffs, straightforward. So we just gotta find our buff. And add a tint. And this saves tint, right? So we're adding a tint here. And then whenever a buff is removed, we just remove the tint as well. So under remove buff, we remove the tint. And under update as well, we remove the tint. Because the update function removes the buff after a certain amount of time. And that's it. That's our buff system. And I think that's all, right? We have a tint system, and now the work right now in front of us is just to create the buffs and test everything. I think we're done. So what's left is exploring the different buffs that we can apply. So I guess I can create a couple of weapons to apply buffs and debuffs. So for example, we have a freeze buff, right? So we have a freeze buff, this type here, I'll just say freeze. And the freeze buff will zero out the move speed for the enemy. So it's going to zero the moves. It's going to zero out the move speed, and let's see, all of these are floats. Let's call this freeze. And no icon at the moment, we don't need icon. And freeze deals some damage, right? Makes sense. Deal some damage over time. Then heal. Refresh duration only. Duration of 10 seconds. And most importantly, freeze turns you blue. And you've got to make sure to set the alpha here. And I can just add the freeze buff to, say, to enemies. Oh, I mean, let me add a freeze buff to an existing weapon and test it out. Like, say, to the knife, for example. But I've got to add it to the scriptable object. So, weapons, knife. And applied buff. Let's just put freeze. So let's see how this works out. Okay, we have a couple of problems here. First problem is that we have to sort out the advantage. Because the debuff is not supposed to deal damage and knock the character back, right? Why is the knockback happening still? And this is annoying. I think we have quite a few bugs that we have to fix. First of which is the take damage function. The other thing is that when we free something, it should stop animating, right? I think that's something that we haven't covered. So the bad clone is taking damage. But why? If I remove the take damage, hit, remove, knockback, doesn't make sense because my take damage doesn't cause any knockbacks, you know. Knockbacks are happening. Path data freeze doesn't change. Oh, its move speed is minus. So if I set this to 0, oh, it's the move speed thing that's causing the issue. Silly me. So the knife is actually fine. It's just that the move speed is reversed. That's gotta be the silliest thing ever. So let's test out the knife and see whether the freeze buff does anything. I'm supposed to take damage back. I think our buffs and debuffs will need to have some kind of a improvement as well, because we have to also factor in what happens like whether you can, what kind of disables can you apply to the enemy as well. Like for example, whether they should completely not be able to move. Okay, so the freeze effect kind of works. Now it doesn't freeze the enemy, it just turns the enemy. Oh, why is it purple now? Doesn't make sense for it to be purple. Because it took damage. So it takes damage and now it's frozen. And I see it continues animating, which shouldn't be the case. Okay, I'm just gonna get my regular afternoon tea. I've kind of have a few ideas of what to do. We have quite a few more things to do. We're not done yet. I was celebrating too early. But I'll be right back. Just give me a moment to grab some tea, inspire myself. So where I left off just now, the tinting system for the buffs and debuffs are working, but now we have to test out whether we're able to apply effects like, for example, freeze, or like say the disabling of attack or disabling of damage. So let's have a look at that. One of the things I was thinking about as I was walking to get my beverage is we should have an option for us to select that controls whether the debuff the modifier will multiply or will add. So what I mean by this is as follows. So let's go back to buff data, and under the stack type over here is fine. This is just a type of buff. So we have stack types, and then we also need to have the enemy. Let's see, we also have fire type. So this will be additive or multiplicative. This can also be applied, right? If you say like that. Let's use bytes for all of our numbers. The flag here can be applied as well. Doesn't really make much of a difference. So we have the debuff type, we have the stack type, and then we also want to have the modifier type, which is right here. So then this will be additive or multiplicative, and this will affect how the modifier applies to the enemies and to the player. So for example, for the freeze, right, we want the freeze to reduce the move speed, to zero it out. So then the move speed here will be 0. But then everything else will have to be 1 because you have to maintain the value. And of course we ignore the curse boosts and the level boosts. So by default, the value here should be additive, but then we can change this to be multiplicative. Which means, let me just see how this works. This means that if we go back to enemy stats, and we go to recalculate stats here, right? We will have to check whether the buff data just buff data equals to get data if BD is, I'm missing out something, feeling like I'm forgetting something, right? I forgot to remove these parts. So the remove tint, color tint will be tint, color tint, where is it? Tint factor is fine. bath data type. Where is the bath data? TNT. So we want to see whether the value that we are getting, whether we should be using it as a multiplier or not. So this will be we will do a switch. VD we should do all the additive ones first, right? Then the multiplicative ones after. Only makes sense like this, right? Otherwise, the order of buffs will affect how they apply. Hi Nicholas. I'm doing a buff and debuff system and it's a lot of math. I'm having a brain freeze right now. If you roll back the video a couple of hours, maybe an hour ago, the buff system is working. We just have to get the details right, and then after that we never have to touch code again to create different kinds of buffs. Like every kind of buff can be created with this system. So we should apply all the multiplicative buffs first, right? And then we add the additive buffs afterwards. It's probably the better way of doing things. So add all the buffs to our character first. So only if the buff is if BD type equals to buff data modifier type. So if it's multiplicative, we have to multiply the stats accordingly, but we can't multiply the stats, so we will have to multiplier is already used by curse. Add operator to add stats. What other operator do we have? Send. I guess we can use that. Okay. Oh, we can have the same multiplier. This is interesting. R1 is the fifth. So this will be R freeze times R1 kill times R2 kill R2 buff with used by the buffs. So this allows us to under recalculate stats multiply stats by one another. So we add all the multiplicative buffs together first. And then after that we add the additive buffs. And can actually do everything in one loop, right? So we can save the multiplier, and after that do that. So instead of adding them directly to the actual stats, here we'll just do a switch the modifier type. So if the modifier type is additive, we will add it to sum total. So we can save all of the additive buffs under a sum like that. Then if the buff data is multiplicative, we can just grab the stats and multiply it by the enemy modifier. And then after that we add So what this allows us to do is, this allows us to apply stats either in an additive way or in a multiplicative way. So for example, if I change the modifier type here to multiplicative, and I hit something with this buff, right, this should zero out the move speed. But the health should be 1 still, 1, 1. Damage should be 0, this should be 1. And everything here should be 1. Original value. And curse boosts and level boosts will just remain as they are, they're not affected. So let's look at how the freeze effect applies with the multiplicative boost. So this should stop an enemy from moving at all, like after it's getting frozen. See that? The enemy stops moving. Okay, let me hit the red bat to show this to you. Yeah, so because the freeze also deals damage, if I zero out the damage, it'll become more obvious. Maybe the multiplicative buff should apply after the additive ones. Make more sense to me. Can't get with knife. There we go. So let me just hit something with the knife. And you see that when I hit something with a knife, right, because the knife applies the freeze debuff, you will see that the enemy just stops moving. But it's still flapping its wings because, well, we haven't stopped the animation, but we can definitely stop the animation. That is no problem. So multiplicative buffs, I think, will be very useful because they allow us to zero out the values. Question is, should we apply the multiplicative ones or the additive ones first? And maybe applying the multiplicative ones first will be better because the multiplicative ones allow us to because if we apply the additive ones later, right, this will not allow us. So for example, if I have two buffs on the enemy, one of the buffs increases the move speed maybe by 2, and the other one multiplies the move speed by 0. So when this happens, right, when this happens, what we will have is we will have the bed still being able to move despite being frozen, and that's not a good sign. So the multiplier should apply last, shouldn't apply first, which means that this will be multiplier. I have to change this to become the multiplier then, and then the multiplier will have just a whole bunch of default values. Everything has to be a value of 1. Damage is 1. Speed is 1. Knockback is also 1. And resistances will be equals to this will be 3. Debuff is 1. And what else is 1? Fail is 1. What we are creating here are a bunch of variables. We just want to set everything to a value of 1. And then the multiplier, when you apply them, this will change the multiplier. So the additive one will just add directly to the actual stats, and the multiplicative one will add to the multiplier. This. And then finally we multiply this. So the multipliers always apply last. This is to ensure that if you have multiplier of 0, this will stop everything. So now the freeze debuff, because the move speed and damage is set to 0, right? This should disable the enemy. So later on, when we code enemies that are capable of attacking, if the damage of the enemy is set to 0, the enemy will become unable to attack. We probably should do that now as well. We can modify the onTrigger enter 2D function later on the enemy. So let's test out the freeze. Okay, the freeze stops the enemy. So then we also have to perhaps let me just add this. Implementing a buff drinking system. Let me just update this and see the table of contents. You also have to update the player stats script, right? Under the player stats script, we have to account for the buffs here as well. I'll think about how to retitle this section later. I'm just gonna call it implementing freeze. Great. Multiplicative. So then there are certain buffs that are multiplicative in nature. So for that to happen, we will have to add the modifier type. This should be buff data. Yes. Oh, we have a new sub. Fantastic. Thanks for subscribing if you're watching the channel, the stream I mean. So I'm almost done with the buff and debuff system that we have. I'm just making some documentation. Later, the hard part will be reorganizing everything to make sense of it all. Hi Cam. So this episode is inspired by you, because when I saw your buff and debuff system, I thought we have to implement it, otherwise there'll be some weapons that we can't do in this project. I'm really excited, but it's becoming more complicated than I expected. So I'm coding how to do freeze, and a status called break. Break is basically disabling your attack. That's what they call it in Dota. So then our buff system, maybe let me just run through how the buff system works. We have a buff data like this, and then you can classify what type of what kind of debuff your debuff belongs to. So this will allow you to have freeze resistance or debuff resistance, and then we have multiple levels for debuffs as well. So for example, you can have 3 different levels for your buffs, and then when you apply a buff to an enemy, you can select the level. And then the buff themselves, they have a player modifier. This controls how the buff modifies the player, and then we also have an enemy modifier, which controls how enemies are affected by the buff. And then you can choose whether the buffs they add stats or they multiply the stats. Because for example, if you have freeze over here, right, it multiplies, it just zeroes out move speed. So this has to be multiplicative for the freeze to work, and then it zeroes out the damage as well. And then when you have a buff, you can apply a visual effect and or a color modification, and then you can choose how long the buff lasts, whether it does any damage, and then how often the damage is dealt. And then the buff can stack either fully, or they can refresh the duration, or they don't stack at all. And then yeah, it's pretty exciting, and I'm almost done here. I've been almost done for about 2 hours now, so I may keep saying I'm almost done, but I may find new things to fix as I go along. Thanks for the Steam coupon, by the way. I haven't had the time to check out your game. I have a long weekend, so I'm gonna type in the coupon code that you've given me. Give your game a try, because it looks really nice from the last I saw. Thank you so much for the code. So we have, where was I? I was writing this, right? Bonuses, SQL, because buffs, some of our buffs, some of our buffs, such as freeze, So the changes to buff data are as follows. This little change here. That's very nice. Shop system. That so when if you want to apply the stat bonuses, you just have to go to the player stats here, and you just have to add on to the code over here. Right now, it only considers passive. So if you can find a way to record all of the boosts into an array, then you can just use recalculate stats to record the boosts. So all the best in your endeavor. Modifier type. So these are the additions right here as well. And then we have add after, then by set. So enemy stats pages are right here. We have to change the way that the buff is applied. Very nice. Save and loading is pretty difficult to do, so it's very nice that you got it working. I hope you managed to move everything out of scriptable objects. That way you can build your game into an exe file. Gone. And for player stats, we have to apply the same thing as well. I can just copy and paste the enemy stats section for this one actually. And it's gonna be the same concept here. Add all the multiplicative buffs first. Have to account for the buff entity stats as well. So for the player stats, remove this. And player stats uses character data stats, so that means that alright, I'll check out your game. So here I'm going to have to, for player stats, because it uses character data stats, have to replace this with this. So this will be new character data stats. Dot stats. Data dot stats. And let me just combine everything into a single line. So it doesn't take up as much space. And because this is a multiplier, everything has to be float value like this. So we probably also have to implement a multiplicative operator here as well. So we just copy this, paste this here, and we change the symbol here all to multiplication so that we can multiply different sets, character data, information together. For yes. Thank you. You have an awesome night too. Once I'm done with the writing, I'll have a better night. The writing part is the part I don't enjoy the most. It's all the documentation. We're almost done here, so I think after this is done, I'll have a great night. Star operator. Sets. So now that that's done, so then the same deal over here. We run through all the buffs. And we just add the player modifier, or we multiply the player modifier. And after that's done, and we get actual stats, and we multiply it by the, I think that's all. I also want to make it so that if the might of the character is 0, it doesn't do any damage. It doesn't try to attack at all. I wonder if that's possible. Anyway, I think this works. Later on, we have to test the buffs to the player character. But for now, this is the same logic, so let's apply this to player stats script. And what we have here is just modification of the actual stats code. So these lines are added. This line here is added. This line is removed. And what else is removed? This line here is removed. And this is the player stats script. Player stats CS. This should be a heading 4. It's pre-formatted and we got this. Labeling the I0. This will effectively pause it. So when the enemy is frozen, I want to also stop the animator. But then if we want to stop the animator, we will have to so resume the animator at a later time, right? That's the and if we want to build a system for that, then maybe that makes things a little more dicey. So we have animator over here. What if I disable the animator? Oh, I can disable the animator just fine. And if I re-enable it, it just continues flapping its wings. Oh, that's fantastic. That's actually very fantastic. So I guess I'll just disable the animator, then I don't have to worry about So let me just explain what I'm thinking so hard about. So let's say if the animation speed now is 1, right? If I freeze the animation speed, it becomes 0. So then this zeros out the animator. But then I'll need to find a way to reinstate the original animator value, which is the complicated part. Because the freeze doesn't last forever, and after the debuff goes away, I will have to find a way to resume the animation speed. So one option is to disallow the speed from going all the way to 0, so I can just have a multiplier of, let's say, minus 0.001. What this will allow me to do is this will reduce the speed to a very low value, and then it can always be set back up afterwards. I don't want to disable the animator because I want to make this system as flexible as possible. Remember what I mentioned about this. So if I have a animation speed property, I can just adjust it accordingly. You know, so I can say below the tint, I can add an animation speed. So if I don't multiply anything by 0, I can always retrieve the old value by just dividing the value again, and I think that's probably a good idea. So then freeze can just set the animation speed to a very small value instead of zeroing it out. I think that's a great idea. So let's execute on this. Let's go to buff data and let's add one more property. This will be float animation speed. So the default doesn't affect the animation speed. Whether this buff slows down. And we're also gonna group everything together. So I'm just gonna add a header here. This will be visuals. And then after that, over here, we will have the values. Oh. Okay. So then this will organize our buff a little bit. So we have the visuals section and we have the values section. Or we can call it visuals and stats. So then by adding this animation speed section, I can, when the buff is applied, let's go back to entity stats again. Animator. So the entity stats will have to track the animator as well, which means this will be protector, animator. And then under start, just gonna grab the animator, component. Oh, and now we have to add a new system, right, for modifying the animation speed. So public variable for apply animation. This will be a throw factor. Animator speed apply factor. But we have to make sure that the value never exceeds a certain amount. So math approximately. If the value of factor is approximately equals to 0, then we will have to set factor to be equal to fx dot sign Oh no, we didn't have to go through all that work, right? Just have to get mathf dot maximum. No, that's wrong. This factor is math. So if the value of factor is 0, we will just set it to 0. It's very small. What is the smallest? Let's see. Seven significant digits. Seven significant. So we can just set this to be a very small value. 1, 2, 3, 4. Event factor. Click virtual void, remove. Yeah. Load factor. And this will be animator speed divided by this value. Same value. So we again have to add the animation speed. and this will grab on fly animation multiply. Equals to fly. So then under remove path, we have to remove the animation speed as well. So this means grab the animation multiplier, the speed. We do the same thing here, and I think that allows us to basically I think now the freeze effect should apply correctly. Let's just test this out again. Need a knife. So the freeze effect reduces your animation speed to 0. So we should be seeing the freeze effect just totally stop the animation speed of the enemies. Ah, I got the knife. Why did I stop the game? There we go. So now if I freeze the bed, you see that the animation stops here, which is that's pretty exciting. Gosh, can't believe it's working, man. Oh, this is so exciting. So I can freeze enemies with the knife and look at that. The flower is just greening and frozen. All right, this is exciting. Okay, so the freeze system is working. Look at this big shitty thing smile on my face. I'm really happy that this got this to work. Saving the animator free. Reducing animator. So where are the changes? Over here is the added animator line here and the added animation speed line here, and of course animation speed modifications here, and these new functions over here to apply animation modifiers, and this line here. Where else? Move animation multiply. Is that all? I think that is all. Move animation multiply, we have all the tints. And yes, that is all. And we apply the buff, right? What else did we change? The animation speed. On the buff data, we introduced a couple of new headings. So we had a visuals label here. This new animation speed here. Move. And yeah, that's it. So this is the buff data object. Then we have let me just label all of my headings over here. Racing Greeks. Implementing freeze and break. So the last thing is just disabling attacking on the enemy and the player stats, right? So should disable the ability of the enemy to deal damage. Damage is 0. So that should be under trigger. Something is responsible for dealing damage to the player. Gotta find out what is the on collision state. Disabling. So one disable the ability. And here is actual dot damage. And have this is for enemy stats. Just add a little line here to prevent damage from being dealt if damage stat is 0. And we apply the same concept to player, but for the player we will have to go to weapon, and there is a can attack function that we can just disable. I think this can attack function applies to all our weapons. So what I want to do here is just add a hit damage. If the damage is approximately 0, then false here. This should disable all the weapons, provided they correctly implement the function. So if the might is 0, then this will completely disable the weapon from attacking. 3, 4, weapon 6. So now if the might is set to 0, the player just completely doesn't attack. So right now the weapon, let's just use a different weapon. So the lightning ring still fires, but if I set the might of the player to 0, then the attacking just stops, which I think is great. Might 0, so no more attacks will fire because the might is 0, and this disables the attacking altogether. So this allows us to add like a bunch of debuffs. Oh yeah, and the last thing that we have to do, right, is to implement enemy resistance. So for the enemy resistances themselves, we can add a debuff chance for the weapon itself. So under the weapon data, we can, under the debuff data, just add a probability scale as well. So buff data, there's buff info, right? Where's my buff info? Yeah, stats here. Where is the buff info? Oh, this is under weapon data, my bad. Weapon data. It's buff. Oh, where's buff? Applied buffs. Okay, it's under weapon stats now. Buff. So buff, okay, then we have, let's add a new, oh, probability. This will range from 0 and 0 to 1. And I guess we have to turn this into a struct now. And this allows us to set a probability for the buff of happening. And I want the default value to always be 1. Shouldn't be 0. But I have no idea how to do that. Maybe if I change this to a class, I can do that. So I can set here the probability will be just 1. So then whenever I add a new buff info, right? I think this can work. So if I add a new one here, and now it's 1. Fantastic. Okay, so we have a probability of that happening. Five buffs. So apply buff. What apply buff does then is that it has to calculate the probability of the buff applying. So because the weapon data has a chance of applying the buff, that means that under the apply buff, random.value is greater than slash random.value is less than the So here we have a little probability option here. We apply the buff. Let's see if this probability thing works, alright? I'm gonna set the freeze to have a 50% chance of applying, and this should cause the weapon to apply the buff only 50% of the time. So it doesn't always apply. So this freezes, but then it doesn't always freeze. See that? So we can adjust the probability of the weapon applying freeze quite nicely by using the probability over here. And finally, we also want to integrate the stats, the resistances, right? So here we can just go to enemy stats and we can override the apply buff function like this. Public override void apply. Oh, this returns a boolean. So we override that function, and then we just post return apply buff, base apply buff, data variant, duration multiply. But then before we do that, right, what we want to do is just check the resistances. So if we can do the buff data, and switch the buff data, and you can see whether the buff is considered a freeze or debuff. Case. Buff, freeze, okay, freeze. If the debuff is a freeze, then we can there may be a chance that we ignore it. So then we check for resistances. Control the resistances. So then we can just do a random value if it's less than or equal to freeze. If it's less than or equals to freeze, then we will return false. So we do the same thing for debuff. So now if we have a debuff, so let me just set the freeze debuff back to a probability of 1. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna have one enemy and set the resistance of the enemy, set the freeze resistance of the particular enemy, right, to be higher. Let me just grab a enemy with more health so that we can see this better. So for example, we have these flowers over here. And what I'm gonna do is just grab all of these flowers. And I'm gonna set their freeze resistance to say 0.6. And what you will find is that sometimes the freeze doesn't apply. See that? Because it has freeze resistance. So because the freeze resistance is 0.6, doesn't always apply. I think this is pretty cool now. And I'm pretty happy with the result. So let me just implementing enemy resistance. This will be under enemy stats. Then we just have to override the apply buff right here. So I'll need some time now to think through the features that I have to test. And I mean, I was planning to write the article today, but then we ended up just writing a whole bunch of code to implement the various aspects of the buff and debuff system. It's a very sprawling kind of system, right? I think we are more or less there. I'm very happy with what we've got today. Now we just need to create a weapon that can actually freeze, and this can show us how well the buff and debuff system works. So right now the knife freezes, which is so silly. But what I'll do is let's look at the clock lancet and then let's see how that one works. Then we can maybe create an effect for it or something. IS drivers. How does the clock lancet work? It's just a beam that fires off. and we can perhaps use a line renderer for that. Let's see if we can find an image for this clock lancet. Video. Let's look at the video. Evolve the clock lancet. Okay, let's see how it looks like, and then we can recreate that. So it's basically just a weapon that fires a beam, which I think is pretty easy to create, you know. So if we want to create a clock lancet particle effect, we can just have a new particle system, and we just take away the shape and the emission, and this is just going to be a rate of 0 and a burst 1. And we can make the speed like really fast. And then make it leave a trail. That's it. Like a lifetime of, let's say, 0.5 trail with a width. So the lifetime can be, say, 0.5. Yeah. And get this. So if we set this to 90, then we will need to let's just leave it at 90. So that goes up. And let's figure out how we can. We can set the width of the trail to be a curve, and then it just goes down like that. And then we can do a color over trail as well, and just zero out the alpha like that, so it looks like a beam. We can even, you know, play around the wave over trail so that we have a wave over trail that is not thin at the end, but maybe fat at the end, but thin in the middle. So it can give us something like this. No, it's the what? About this. And then we can improve the visibility of the color as well. This. Increase the speed even more. 200. have a lifetime. What about color of a lifetime? This can just be a regular color. I think this works much better. This can be blue, right? So what we get is a blue beam like that. Velocity of life. And if we use an additive material, let's see, let's do this. If we use an additive material, then we can if we use additive material, we can have bursts of multiple particles. This. And randomize the lifetime. And make the wave maybe a lot fatter. And what if I do not dampen? This really goes very far. So dampening will let the trail kind of stay around for a little bit. If I increase the size of the trail, this gives me a very nice burst. And I can always just leave a longer lifetime. It's better looking than the Lancer that we have, right? That Vampire Survivors had. It's just one line. And it's a particle effect that we can just spawn and point it in the right direction, I guess. If we were to because the other way that we would do this is if we were to create a trail renderer like this, but then this will make things very messy. Because if we make a trail renderer, oh wait, we can use a trail renderer, no problem. So if we have a trail renderer, this means that we move things around. Then we can just configure the beam, and this will be cast shadows off. And the color is gonna be blue, right? The color be some shade of blue. So give us trail like this. Then we can even manipulate the width, so we can make it fat at the bottom, kind of. Like this. So we can make it fat at the bottom. And the width can even be of two values, right? Let's get this color here as well. Then we can reset our file. So we can round off this thing here also by changing the end cap of vertices. There we go. This gives us a round beam like this. And if we set the width to a flat value, look at that. And if we change this to additive, does it work? No, certainly doesn't work. So we've got it. Here's the line. Default line. then we can always five. This actually gives us pretty nice trail. So if I say fire a projectile of the Lancet, this leaves a trail like that. Let me just show you what I mean. So if I play the game, and let me just fire off this trail right here and something negative 4. And what you will see in the game is nothing. What you see in the game is shouldn't it be moving? I'm thinking the trail way of doing things is probably the best, but I guess I'll just need to improve on the effect. So this can be the Clock Lancet projectile. Except maybe I'll need a better line material or something. We have some particles that under VFX that I might be able to use. We have Kenny's sprite sheet, right? Where's the white square? Select dependencies. I don't know where this white square is coming from. I'm using the white square anyway. Probably not. Let's delete this. Okay, I'm just gonna end the stream today. We're almost done. So now it's just left with the article and then writing a post as well on how to create a Clock Lancet, which I think is important for us to test our buff and debuff system. I have to give some thought about what else we might have to add into the part before I release the part. Otherwise, I'll spend the weekend just putting the article together, and then I think we'll be good to release the next part in a couple of weeks. So thanks for tuning in if you've been watching the stream. Really appreciate it.